Hello, welcome back to WTF is AuDHD with neurodivergent sisters Ellie and Paige. This is a podcast by two late diagnosed AuDHD sisters, and we're diagnosed late.
And we're here to educate.
Hey, nice. That's how we should do it. So you can have one line to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I always say
the whole episode. Jokes.
No,
but we know that Ellie likes to talk.
I do talk a lot in these episodes. I'm very, very domineering.
But you're concise and you're to the point. When I talk, it's like, all right, hurry up. It's like, get to the point.
No, we're beautiful and perfect. No,
I'm not talking about whether I was beautiful. No, I already know that. I'm not a good speaker, okay?
No, you are. Today's episode, we're going to chat about just ADHD. Just like kind of what is it? We're going to go through some of the myths that you might have heard and counteract them with facts and science. And basically just get a feel for ADHD and what it actually is, because we haven't really talked about this, have we?
We've only spoken about our experiences and our diagnosis, Exhibit A, diagnosis processes, and our experiences. I already said that. Cheers. Back to you,
cheers. No, but exactly, we haven't really touched on what it is, and this is going to be what this episode's about, what it is. And again, though, there is still so much more to talk about. So we're going to touch lightly on certain aspects of it, but each aspect is probably going to become its own episode eventually, because there's just so much to cover. So first of all, though, I just wanted to quickly note, I saw in my Instagram the other day that there's been a new clinic opened up by a guy called Mike. He's a clinical psychologist, I think in Taranaki. He's set
Mike
up...
Oxlong?
Oh my gosh.
Mike Oxlong.
Sorry. ADHD Exhibit A.
Do you know Mike Oxlong? Okay, sorry, go.
That is not his name. He's a very lovely man called Mike.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. And yeah, I'm really sorry if that comes across bad. No,
that's ADHD, just you're a bit bored there, so you just have to make it a bit more entertaining, didn't you?
So,
no, he's opened the New Zealand Psychology Clinic, and basically it's to specialise in ASD and ADHD diagnoses. ASD is autism spectrum disorder. So it looks like there's just more of these clinics popping up around New Zealand because they're all realising that there's not enough places for people to get diagnosed. So look that up. They're on Instagram, NZ Psychology Clinic. That could be a place you could look into getting a diagnosis in New Zealand if you need. And we will always bring you information that we find, like as we find it. So that's just one I found this week. Also, one thing I haven't touched on is that if you're a student at university, look into their disability services, because a very, very close friend of mine, she actually got diagnosed with ADHD through her university, and it was funded. It was free, and it was part of their disability services. So just have a look around, because you might actually find that if you're at uni, there's special things like that can maybe help you get a diagnosis while you're a student. Yeah,
look into it. Ask ChatGPT.
That's the other thing. ChatGPT is quite good at just gathering info, isn't it?
It's just a good place to gather, because it kind of just scrounges Google and gathers all the relevant bits of info. Anyway, cheers.
Exactly. Thank you so much for the contribution. Once again.
I feel so valuable.
Nah. Okay, so how are you feeling today, Paige?
I'm feeling better than what I was this morning.
Yeah.
This morning was very interesting for that one. Oh, I'm definitely in my luteal phase.
And what's that? If people don't know what the luteal phase is.
The luteal phase is the phase before the menstrual phase in the menstrual cycle. There's 4 stages of the menstrual cycle. Obviously, the menstrual is the exertion of...
The shedding
of the blood. And the... Well,
no, it's true. Sorry, I don't know why I laughed at that. I don't know why I laughed at that.
What the fuck? Are you in 5th grade, bro?
Sorry, yes. No, the shedding of the blood, yeah.
Yes, shedding of the uterine lining. And the phase prior to that is the luteal phase, which is really the worst phase of them all.
It is.
The menstrual itself, although that's the phase where your uterus is shedding, it's actually, once you've gone through the luteal phase, you're kind of feeling a bit better mentally. But yeah, the luteal phase is the phase that's really shit. And I know for a fact that, there's PMS, which most women deal with.
Premenstrual syndrome.
Yeah, premenstrual syndrome. And PMS can be a lot more intensified for women with people with ADHD
and autism.
Yeah. I should have got the stats on that, but I think it's something really high that I think it's like don't quote me on this, we need to look this up, but it's like 80% of women with autism have PMDD, So PMDD is like PMS on steroids, pretty much.
Menstrual dysphoria disorder.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's just where you can feel like a completely different person. It impairs your life more than it already does if you have autism and or ADHD. It's like everything is, you're a different person. You're depressed, anxious.
Yeah, can I chime in with some scientific stuff?
Yeah, please. No, please do, because I'm struggling.
No, so when you go into your luteal phase, this is when your estrogen drops and your progesterone increases. And the progesterone is the chemical or the hormone that makes you kind of shitty. And when women or people don't have estrogen, they get, first of all, shittier in general, but estrogen is actually responsible for helping dopamine production. So if you've got ADHD and you've already got low dopamine, and then you are in your luteal phase and your estrogen drops further and then your progesterone increases, then this is why we end up really depressed in that week. And it can feel like you're a completely different person for that 1 or 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, you flip again and you're like, I'm just bloody on top of the world.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking back then.
Oh my God, the ups and downs are crazy.
Yeah.
And so I notice it really, I think as you get older as a woman, you just become more aware of your body, and also you just start to mature more.
And you're not as like resilient because your body's older.
Yeah, I really started to notice this change around 24, 25, I would say. And since then, it's just like I've been a different person every 2 weeks, and it affects my life. It affects my ability to complete normal things in life on top of just ADHD in general and autism. But it just amplifies everything. Also, for me, it makes my tics like awful and unbearable. But so I went to my doctor probably 2 months ago now, and I was like, there's got to be something for this.
There must be another way. Sorry.
Nah, all good.
No, I've just ruined your flow.
No, it's fine. I was like, there's got to be something for this, because like this is hell. And I know a lot of women deal with it as well, obviously. And so I went to my doctor and I told her my symptoms and how it impairs my life and everything I've just said right now. And she was like, yeah, we can try. There is, so in New Zealand, it's called fluoxetine. We can try that. It's also known as Prozac, which is also used for depression, anxiety. It's like a widely used
OCD,
drug for a few things. But
it's an SSRI.
Yes.
Which is a serotonin substance reuptake inhibitor.
Not substance, is it?
Oh, no, I don't
Serotonin. We need to get our facts straight, bro, before we hit record.
Wait, you keep going.
Serotonin's... Anyway.
Yeah, I can't get the other rest.
Yeah, so... So, yeah, it's also known as Prozac. People might know it. And I know it's obviously like a touchy subject talking about meds in general, because I think a lot of people don't have great experiences with meds. It makes sense. Everyone's different. Every medication affects people differently. And also everyone needs different doses and all that. So this is my experience. And so I said, yes, please. I would love to try that. My doctor, she's great. She said, just so you know, when you come on to fluoxetine, it can be quite horrible for the first month. It actually makes your anxiety worse before it makes it better. And I was like, oh, great. She was like, but because she prepared me for that and really, warned me, she said, so your tics might get really bad. And she said, but just try and push through. I promise you, just try push through and it will get better. And I was like, okay. So I was prepared for that. She was right. For the first 2-3 weeks, my anxiety was really bad and my tics really bad. I was close to giving up, but I didn't, because she made it so clear to me, like, it will get better. And I was like, okay, I just got to push through. I pushed through, and my experience on it is that it has been absolutely life-changing. So right now, I'm in my luteal phase, and I can still notice, like I definitely notice, but I would say I'm not anywhere near as anxious as what I used to get, and I'm nowhere near as depressed as what I would get. It's like, I'm low, but I'm almost just, I'm still like happy. Like in my mind, I'm still happy. I'm just like low and my energy's low.
It doesn't consume you.
It doesn't.
Like it did.
No, it doesn't consume me. So even though I'm in my luteal phase right now, it is a lot better than, oh my God, it's actually been life-changing for me. And I've spoken to a lot of other people, not a lot, a couple of friends who have also tried fluoxetine, and they had really bad experiences on it. And one thing I will say is that I also found that a certain dose was too much for me, where it actually started to numb me. And when I spoke to my friends about this, they said that they found it numbed them and it completely ruined your sex drive. And it can be true, and obviously for them. And I found that, so I went down back to the smaller dose, and that's perfect for me. So I find that a lot of people perhaps have a bad experience on the dose that they've been prescribed by their doctor, and then kind of go, screw that, not using that. If that happens to you and you're feeling really numbed and it's just not, it's too much, like maybe the next step, instead of just giving up on it completely, just try lowering your dose and see how that works before giving up on it completely, because that's what I did, and now it is absolutely life-changing.
Yeah. I have also, this is obviously not an episode on PMDD. We are going to get to ADHD. We will do a full episode on this though, because it's really under-researched and affects women and people with menstrual cycles really heavily.
Yeah.
I've also just started fluoxetine, but I'm behind you. So I've only started it maybe, this must be my 3rd or 4th week.
Yeah.
In the first couple of weeks, I was really anxious, but it started to help me as well.
Yeah.
Like I actually just feel, I feel like I didn't actually have a lot of serotonin at all. And I didn't realize that. So that's why my luteal phase was also really bad.
Yeah.
Just going to come back to the SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor.
Oh yeah, nice.
Get that right.
Yeah.
So I will keep you updated on my journey too. I'm still, I think, too early to give a real good analysis on it from my perspective, but it's definitely helping me in general.
Analysis. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So in conclusion, how are you today, Paige?
Oh yeah. So I mean, look, I'm out of the month. It's probably one of the worst days, but I'm okay. In comparison, I look back and I'm like, holy shit, how was I managing life? I wasn't really. It was awful. And for that luteal phase, it was just, I thought my life was over. The catastrophizing is like crazy. But another thing I'll actually note, as Ellie mentioned, fluoxetine and Prozac can be used for OCD. It's the primary treatment for that. And when I went and saw my psychiatrist last, I talked to her about my tendencies of that. So little rituals and all that. OCD is not just having to have everything clean. No, it's a lot deeper than that. And so I talked to her my tendencies, and she said, it sounds like it's not taking over your life. And I'm like, no, it's not that severe. But she said, it sounds like you have tendencies of OCD. And so you're on the right treatment for that, fluoxetine. And I also feel like it's helping that side of me. It's helping with those obsessive compulsive things that I feel like I had to do, or chronic overthinking and ruminating thoughts, chronic catastrophizing of everything was
same. That's the first thing I've noticed actually, is that it's stopping my intense rumination and thoughts spirals. Yeah. And I'm just kind of not thinking as much, but it's not a bad thing.
No.
It's quite a good thing for me.
It's freeing.
Yeah, it is
Feels freeing.
Yeah.
You kind of just go, instead of in a situation where I'll be like, oh my God, that's, whatever, your mind goes wild. It's just like, it's okay. Yeah. It's going to be sweet.
Exactly. And I think also knowing you have PMDD, again, having the knowledge of it really helps, because before we knew that was a thing, Paige and I would get really hard on ourselves and genuinely think that those 2 weeks that we're in, because when you're in it, you're in it. You think that's your life. Yeah. You just genuinely think that's how my life is now. But now that we know that, I'm in my bad bit of my menstrual cycle, it's like, it kind of disempowers it in a way. Yeah. And then the medication helps handle it.
Yeah. And you can kind of treat yourself just a lot more kinder during that week, and not beat yourself up, which is what we did. Like, why are you not? Yeah. It's just like, I'm in that phase and it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll do a proper episode on PMDD eventually, but it is something that we deal with every day, really. Yeah. Because every day is a different part of the cycle. And I don't think that women's health is researched enough in general, let alone women with neurodivergent brains and their menstrual cycles, or people in general.
No, and also to touch on, because you're in a different phase almost every day, I am convinced, and I think it's actually a lot of people have reported that, obviously, is that obviously, sorry, professor's name, is that you ideally need different levels of dosage every single day, depending on your cycle. That makes so much sense, because on some days you need more anyway. And so that the fact that women, and probably it's true for probably men too, but like that you just get given this one
dose,
which would be hard to manage and give different doses to every, but I think in an ideal world that would be the best way, because sometimes I feel like my medication doesn't work at all if I'm really low.
Same. I do have Ritalin every now and then. Again, we'll talk about medication for ADHD in another episode, and we're not going to talk about that today, but I find that with my Ritalin, when I'm in my luteal phase and menstrual bit, my Ritalin doesn't work as well.
No.
And it's literally because my dopamine's low already,
So
then
low.
it gets lower. When my Ritalin's trying to help my dopamine, it's only bringing it up slightly, and I'm still not at the ideal level.
Yeah.
And so, we need way more research into like medication for ADHD in the context of menstrual cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, anyway, we're not here to talk about that, am I right? No.
Shit, before we get more research on the menstrual cycle and ADHD, we actually need to research the menstrual cycle.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. That's another thing.
Because
it's crazy how little research we have on that.
It is wild.
I'll also just recommend, by the way, if you're listening and you have a menstrual cycle, Period Power is a really good book I read, and it talks about the 4 weeks in your cycle, and the author makes it into summer, autumn, winter, spring. So she kind of aligns it with those seasons, and it makes a lot of sense. And it actually changed my whole life because I didn't realize how much I did not understand my menstrual cycle. So if you ever want to learn more about the menstrual cycle, just read that, because genuinely you need to treat yourself differently each week. You actually do. But for some reason, this world that we live in, this capitalistic world, we are expected to go 100% for all 4 weeks, and our bodies don't work the same in each of those weeks.
No.
So it's pretty unfair. But read. That's a really good book. That's what I recommend. All right, should we go on to ADHD, which is the point of this episode?
Let's do that.
Alrighty. So ADHD, this is the definition. We'll just do the definition first, but it's very sciencey. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition, so you're born with it, affecting self-regulation, which includes attention, motivation, impulsivity, and emotions. It is not just about not paying attention. That's not what it actually means. It's actually more about regulating our attention and energy and working out where that energy and attention should be going. So we don't have a deficit of focus. We don't lack focus. We just have a deficit of control over that focus. So that's actually what ADHD is. It's not you can't pay attention. It's I've got so much attention that I don't know where to divert it, and I might have 10 tasks in front of me, and I don't know which one is the biggest priority. Even though to someone who's neurotypical, they might look at that list and go, well, obviously start with that task. To us, it's like they're all equal.
Oh, man, yeah. No, and the feels on that for me, I really notice. You don't really notice it. Well, you do notice the panic and, but you notice the difference in how much that's impacted you if you do choose to go down the medication route.
Yeah.
The moment that I had that first bit of medication, and I've seen TikToks on this, like people, like it's literally so true. It's just this moment where you're just like, because you feel it for the first time in your life. We're like, holy shit.
My brain's quiet.
Oh my God, it's quiet. And all of those tasks just lock nicely into place in priority, like level of priority. And it's just like, oh, okay, let's not focus on those ones right now. This is one we have to focus on. And it's like that noise goes away. Oh, it is wild.
I still remember the exact spot I was sitting when my first ever bit of medication kicked in.
I know.
And I remember saying to you, I was at Paige's house and I was like, oh my God, is this what everyone has felt like their whole life?
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because I just realized this whole time my brain's been so loud and just yelling at me constantly. And then the medication, it doesn't work for everyone, but the medication for me just like calmed my brain and just shut up the thoughts and made me less messy inside. Just less messy. And it made me go, okay, that's the task I want to do. So that's kind of what ADHD really is. There's myths about it being like, you can't pay attention, blah, 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 blah. It's not that at all. It's actually that I've got too much attention and I don't know where to put it.
So then it's all just overwhelming, so you don't
do anything at all.
Yeah,
exactly. It affects your executive function. So this is like your frontal lobe kind of area. And that's memory, time perception, emotions, and task management. So that's why people with ADHD might have a bad memory, because their working memory isn't that great. Like in the moment, you could list a whole list to me and I'll only remember the last 2 you said. I won't remember the middle ones because we can't hold much in our brain in the moment. We also have difficulties with time perception, and that's why sometimes time feels like it's going so slowly because we're bored. And then when we're enjoying something and we're hyper-focused, we're like, the time feels like 2 minutes and it's been 3 hours.
Yeah.
This is the thing about ADHD as well. You can either have focus on nothing because you've got too much overwhelm, or the opposite, where you're literally hyper focused on something so much that you forget to go toilet. You can't even feel that you need to go toilet. You don't feel hunger. Like all your interoception, which is like your feelings of your bodily functions, literally goes away because you're so hyper focused and zoned in on something.
And also on that, the reason a lot of people with ADHD, as we know, are extremely successful. Some of the most successful people are ADHD, and it's because that particular person has found their absolute passion from a young age, or they've found it. And so the hyper focus on their goals to get there is insane. And so people who say like, oh, well, you can't be ADHD because you're successful. It's like so wrong, because the reason why we're so successful is because when you find your passion is because your ability to just
like zone in, hyper focus is like almost superhuman.
It's superhuman, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why with people with ADHD, it's so important for them to find something they love, because then we are like the best in the world at it. But if we don't find what we love, we do appear to be lazy and not paying attention. This is all, we've got our, what are these called? Speech marks?
Speech bubble fingers.
That's, what are they called? Oh,
emphases. No.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was thinking parentheses.
That's brackets, eh?
That's brackets. Wait, I don't know.
Okay, so that's kind of ADHD, like real basic. That's what it kind of is.
Yeah.
And it isn't just hyperactivity. It's actually like, and it's not just not paying attention. We do have issues with emotional regulation and all these kinds of things.
Have we touched on dopamine yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, sorry.
Not yet. I just wanted to touch on the fact that it's not just a kid's condition. People say that, only kids can have that. That's not true. Adults are born with it. Kids are born with it and then they turn into adults. But often adults don't know they have it until they have kids of their own. And then they see that their kid has ADHD. They've been pregnant and all their hormones have screwed everything up. And now this child sucked all the life out of them. And now they realize that all the masking they were doing, they can no longer do because their child's taking all their attention.
And the amount of energy it takes to mask. And then you, as a mother, I can't speak for it because I don't have any children, but I'm sure you just have no energy to keep up any mask. And so it really comes to light.
Exactly right. It's not, ADHD is not a lack of like intelligence or effort. It is just simply the way the brain is built. It is not, it is a neurodevelopmental condition. We are born this way, and that is just how our brains work. And I believe that ADHD brains have a real good place in society. And there's theories that ADHD people back in the day were the hunters and the gatherers, because they were the ones that could spot the shiny fruit in the distance and go, there's a fruit tree. We're good at like novelty seeking. And I think we actually had a really important role in society.
My smell senses are freaking wild. I would have been the one back in the day going, I smell the predator. Oh, what do they call? I smell the enemies.
No, you would have. And you would have probably noticed the change in an atmosphere. Like, I can smell rain coming or something. Like, our senses are really important.
Yeah.
That could also be partly due to your autism as well. But I think that ADHD brains and autistic brains are simply just a different way they're wired. And I believe it's evolution. I actually think that people who have neurotypical and neurodivergent brains, that is just like biodiversity. It is just neurodiversity. And it's important to the race, like the human race, that we have these different brains, because a lot of people who think outside the box have ADHD and therefore create inventions.
Yeah.
And autistic people have such monotropic minds in terms of like they focus on one thing at a time, that, they theorize Albert Einstein was autistic because he was able to zone in and really like study these things and come up with these incredible bits of knowledge that we still use today.
Yeah.
So I think that neurodiversity is actually just evolution.
Yes.
100%. I think there's a reason we're here.
Yes.
And it should not be shunned.
No.
And I think when people say that ADHD people can't pay attention or autistic people struggle to communicate, why is it on the autistic person to communicate? That's the double empathy problem, where you're saying autistic people struggle to communicate, but you're actually struggling to communicate with an autistic person.
Yes.
So who's actually right?
So who makes who right? Yeah.
It's really frustrating. So I want to really try and change the way we look at neurodiversity. It's not an issue. It's not a problem. It's actually something to be cherished and
the value we can bring if it's nurtured is just, it's so amazing. Exactly. So when people aren't, we feel like we're not built for this world.
Yeah.
This 9 to 5 bloody capitalist whatever world. It ends and we just end up anxious, depressed, and this is at the very surface level of it. But really, we're bloody spectacular people.
Exactly. No, it's true. We need to be nurtured for sure. So we thought the best way to go through this episode really is to kind of just talk about little myths that people say and then kind of combat with them what they actually mean.
Mythbusters.
Myth busting. So I guess the biggest neurotransmitter involved in ADHD is dopamine. And dopamine is the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation, but also pleasure. So one of the myths is that people with ADHD are just lazy. You're just lazy. Now, when I was younger, I was often called lazy.
Yeah.
And I know they didn't mean any harm, but I could never do anything that I wasn't interested in. And I just really struggled. And I then internalized that and thought I was lazy. But then deep down I knew I wasn't, because when I did care about something, I was like really high achieving. So I was very confused by this. So ADHD is real, and it is not just an excuse for laziness.
No.
I'm sick of people saying, oh, it's just an excuse, just
It's an
try
excuse,
harder.
yeah.
You would never say that to someone who needs glasses. Just squint harder.
It's
just
literally-
look harder.
It's the same thing.
It is literally
Well,
the
like,
exact same
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It is a way our brain works, and we're not lazy. And you have a really interesting study about dopamine.
Oh, yeah. So I actually saw this on TikTok initially, and then I read into it. So it's a study that was done actually I think it was actually done in the 90s, so actually like quite a while ago. But then there was follow-up studies on it in the early 2000s. But pretty much the whole point of it was that it was a study on dopamine and motivation, which demonstrated how crucial dopamine is, not just for pleasure, but for initiating goal-directed behavior. So researchers lesioned or damaged the dopamine-producing neurons in the brains of rats. Awful.
Yeah.
Don't love that. But anyway, particularly in the nucleus accumbens, a key region involved in motivation and reward processing. The rats were still physically capable of movement, but became completely unmotivated. When food was placed right next to them, they would eat it. However, if the food was placed just a short distance away, for example, 1 meter, they would starve to death rather than exert the effort to get it. The key findings was that dopamine is not just a pleasure chemical. The rats still enjoyed food if it was readily available, and dopamine is more about motivation and effort than pure pleasure.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So, for example, if you're sitting on the couch and there's a pile of washing sitting there, and you know that needs to be folded, and you just cannot get up, that is a physiological reason for it. You're not actually lazy. You genuinely, your brain is not firing the right neurons off for you to stand up and do that task. So if you right now have been eating yourself up your whole life saying, I'm so lazy, why can't I do anything? Remember, it's a physiological difference in your brain.
Yeah. Dopamine plays a key role in muscle movement. It's primarily a neurotransmitter, and dopamine is essential for motor control and is heavily involved in the basal ganglia, a brain region responsible for coordinating movement. So it's literally not even the fact like, you just don't want to do that because it's not fun for you. It's not that.
No.
I mean, but it's actually a physical inhibitor.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, so no, we're not just lazy, and it's not just an excuse.
No.
We just genuinely have less dopamine, and it makes it harder for us to do things that we're not, when there's no novelty, I guess, involved, because novelty produces dopamine.
That's the thing. I think that's what happens. Therefore, we have more of that neurotransmitter to push us to do that thing. And that's where the pleasure comes from, because pleasure gives off more dopamine, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, your body has more dopamine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's why I think when we do find something we love, because we're getting so much pleasure out of it, our dopamine is just like going, and then
It squeezes the
yeah, and then we can't stop.
But then I'll speak from my own experience, is that I do that for 2 weeks, and you get to a point where that's not sustainable because you're hyperfocusing to like a like you can't sustain it,
Mm.
like a non-sustainable way.
Yeah.
And then you hit burnout and you
Yeah.
crash and it looks like depression and anxiety and
Yeah. And that's actually why I think also people can be misdiagnosed with things like bipolar. Because
Yes.
sometimes ADHD people can look like they're bipolar because they have these like 3 weeks of manic behavior and ideas, and they're doing this and they're doing that and they're doing this and they're doing that. And then 3 weeks later they crash and burn and then they lie in bed.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, oh, they must have bipolar. They look depressed now. But often I don't think it is. I actually think a lot of bipolar and even borderline personality disorder gets misdiagnosed. And
Yeah.
it's actually ADHD or AuDHD,
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
That's been my life. Like, I mean, I was never diagnosed as with bipolar, but it was up, down, so intense, hyper focus, passion, and then it was just like for 2 weeks I'd just be absolutely effed.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, exactly. So then there's also like people don't realize that a lot of the time ADHD people have problems with emotional regulation. And so we often get called like drama queens or like, oh, you're so sensitive and why are you
Moody.
crying at that? And why are you moody and stuff like that. People with ADHD develop slower in the prefrontal cortex, which is like responsible for emotions and impulses. And this is another reason why we are impulsive, because we don't have the same control as a neurotypical person when it comes to something. That's why ADHD people might go and splash out on a big shopping spree and not think about the consequences. That whole frontal lobe there is often the difference between boys and girls maturing like at different rates. Apparently it doesn't develop fully till you're 25, and I think it's even older for men, that prefrontal cortex, just in general. But people with ADHD have emotional issues because of that, so we can react really volatilely. Volatile? We
can be volatile.
Yeah, we can be volatile. Oh my goodness. Because we actually have issues with our prefrontal cortex, and that means we have moods, like you just said, outbursts, and difficulty calming down. And then, back to the dopamine dysregulation. That's kind of the main thing, is that we either have none at all and we can't do anything, or we have too much and we're doing everything all at once.
Yeah, and I think this is also why, where addictive behaviors come from. For me, I'll speak for myself, is like my, I don't want to say addiction, but my obsessive behavior was drinking alcohol. And it was because that gave me dopamine that I otherwise didn't have, or naturally, like a neurotypical person naturally has this much of dopamine. And I found, behaviors that would get me that dopamine, but it's not always healthy behaviors, and that's where a lot of addiction comes from, because someone who doesn't have dopamine or enough will find they get that experience of dopamine through
just
drugs.
Yep. And so
gambling.
Mine was cannabis.
Yeah.
And it was one, I was calming my brain down because it would shut it up. But it was also a dopamine seeking activity.
So it made you happier.
Yeah, exactly right. Often ADHD brains as well, they react before they process. So because that frontal cortex is just not quite as developed, we react impulsively, even emotionally. So before we even have time to think about it, we can just emotionally react. And that's why we look like we're a bit volatile and we're emotional and blah, 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 blah. So those emotions come out before logic has the ability to kick in. And then once those emotions take over, it can be really hard to self-soothe and get back to a normal kind of state. And also because we're wired for all or nothing focus, it's either like yes or not. That's the same with our emotions. We're either really happy or really depressed. Like as a kid, you particularly you were either so happy, like extremely happy, or you were just so upset, right?
All or nothing.
Yeah, literally, it's all or nothing really with ADHD, but that can be a beneficial thing in your life. But then when it's not managed, it can be very damaging to the person, especially if they don't know they have it.
Now I know how to manage that, and I can capitalize on it in a superpower kind of way, but it's because I know and I can manage it. When I didn't know, it was it screwed.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically, we just need to reiterate, it is a brain-based condition. It's actually genetic, and it comes often from parents, because if you think about it, we're wired like our parents, and if their brains are like that, then our brains are probably going to be wired like that. So if you have it, or if your sibling has it, you've probably got it. And if you even are like, this is what often happens. Boys will get diagnosed in a family and get treated for ADHD or autism, And then the girl, the sister, will never ever get treated. And then it's not till they're older that they realize that you might have it. And this again comes back to our point of we want to show that siblings can manifest so differently because often the brother gets done and diagnosed and the girl doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because remember that hyperactivity isn't just outward hyperactivity. With women, it's often internal.
Yeah.
And that's why women with ADHD might actually be very quiet. And that feels like a contradiction. But the reason some women or some people with ADHD are quiet is because they're so hyperactive in their brain that they're actually inattentive. And so they're not paying attention, but they look like they're just sitting there like paying attention, but they're actually not.
Yeah.
And that's why women in particular and other people get missed because that hyperactivity is actually within the brain and not outside.
But even me and you, two girls, so I know we're talking about like the boys sometimes gets, well, I didn't get picked up when I was younger, but even me and you, same family, same gender, completely different.
Yeah, and like going back to that, completely different box of frogs. Big Liz show, anyone seen that one?
Love it.
Yeah, we are so different. Like that's why when Dad got diagnosed, our parents didn't think to look at me because I genuinely was like quite a good kid, but I was very inattentive.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't know it because I was really good at like picking up the basis of a conversation and then replying how I think they needed me to reply.
Yeah, you didn't present at all aligned with the traditional ways or,
No.
So
no, exactly.
That's why we're doing this.
Exactly.
Potty.
Exactly. And I know I've touched on this before, but not everyone is a little bit ADHD. That's not true.
Yeah.
You're not. You're born with it. It's the way your blood. It's the way your brain is wired. And as I've mentioned earlier in other episodes, everyone exhibits traits of ADHD. This is true. Everyone can be a bit lazy. Everyone can suffer from time blindness. Everyone can struggle to pay attention if they're bored. That's true. But it's the amount that it impacts your life that classes whether it's ADHD or not. Because I think even when a human is tired, you can appear ADHD because when you're tired, you forget things and your memory goes and all that kind of stuff. So you may just be tired.
Well, yeah, there's ADHD in like at the core of it, what we explain biologically. But the way you see it is you don't see that.
No.
But you see it in the ways that it manifests in human behavior. So like, yeah, every human has the human traits that every human can have and experience. But yeah, there's just the severity and how it impacts your life.
Exactly right. And you'll find that often people with ADHD who are really successful, they might have this amazing business or whatever, and then you come to their house and their house is an absolute mess and there's plates stacked up on the thing. And that's kind of the weird like contradiction of just having ADHD is that you can appear just so successful, but then you come home and like your drawers are full of shit and everything's messy. And then you start hating on yourself and it's very confusing.
It's so confusing. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, because you're like, what? I'm like successful as here. And then I can't even like get to an appointment because I forget about it. Or I put a reminder in my calendar, but I ignore that calendar invite by accident subconsciously because it doesn't appeal to me in that moment. And then I miss an appointment.
But then if you are aware and you do remember about your appointment at 3 p.m, you're in the waiting room the whole day and can't do anything else. That is the worst. I hate it.
I hate it.
It is awful. Oh my God.
I cannot focus on anything else if I have something at 3 p.m.
No, I can't. Yeah, no, I can't.
No.
I have to now. I think I usually, if I can and I have the power to, I have morning appointments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get it over with so then I can get on with my day, because if I have something, oh my God, it's just like, it's awful.
Yeah, exactly. And another reason, this is why when it comes to dopamine and stuff, procrastination is a massive thing with people with ADHD. And again, that's because I need external pressure to motivate me to do something. So when I was at university, as I've said before, I would procrastinate on an essay or on studying because I could not find the dopamine. There was no dopamine until it was the night before and it was, oh my goodness, you're going to get punished if you don't do this. And now all of a sudden the dopamine was there and I was able to do the stuff. And I still did it to a really high level, but I could not have done that 2 weeks ago because I didn't have the dopamine for it.
It was dopamine out of fear.
Literally, exactly. A lot of my dopamine production has been out of fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's why my mental health and a lot of people like us have had poor mental health issues, because most of their motivation just comes from fear.
No, yeah, and it's exhausting. And I would say the only reason why I got to my job and managed to do that, I also lived in a lot of fear.
Yeah.
Of failing, of being seen by my bosses as, I don't know.
Yeah. No, exactly.
That's what got me to work.
And that's why we ended up with poor mental health, because we weren't genuinely motivated to be there. but we could still do it because we were perfectionists and we cared about what people thought of us.
That's what the dog's guarding. The Philosopher's Stone. Sorry. I don't know why.
We've done about 3 Harry Potter quotes in this EP. We'll start wrapping up now because there's so much more to this. And like we haven't even touched on rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Oh, there's so many things.
Yeah, and that's like an extreme reaction to rejection because up until the age of like 10, we've had like thousands more negative comments that come at us.
Yeah.
And that's why things like imposter syndrome and RSD, they're not necessarily traits of ADHD, but they become traits because of trauma-based
they're learned
experience.
they're learned behaviors that have manifested because we've dealt with low self
rejection and low self-esteem and feeling like we're always failing and being told we're lazy and blah 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 blah. So we'll touch on things like that.
Being a people pleaser because you feel like you're always letting people down. Like I mean, there's a lot of reasons for people pleasing, but I mean it's just one. Yeah,
exactly.
So RSD was a big part of my childhood and teens, still is, but now I know what it is and I can try and but we'll get on to another time, but
we will.
RSD is like a full-on body visceral response where it's like everything in my body, it's like a shooting like feeling throughout my entire body that almost like it's like
it's awful. And it will ruin my day for even a couple of days. Like I can't undo it once I feel like I've had perceived rejection, even if I haven't even been rejected, but it's perceived.
Yeah,
it can just ruin my whole emotional state for like 3 days.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So that's kind of a summary of ADHD, and I don't know if we haven't gone hugely into it, but we just wanted to really emphasize that it can look completely different in lots of people, not even just men and women, but just it can look completely different. It can be more inattentive. It can be hyperactive and inattentive, which is the combined version. And it really is about lack of dopamine and issues with executive function, which is all of the stuff that happens in your prefrontal cortex, responsible for memory, impulsivity, task management and all that kind of stuff.
And therefore it manifests in so many different behavioral ways.
Exactly. And then we mask and try and fit in, and then we end up with really bad mental health. And it's really very nice.
Fun. Not
really cool.
Yeah.
Let us know if you have any questions. We do have our Google form in our link tree now where you can submit like topics that you want us to talk about. And if there's specific traits of ADHD you want us to cover in one episode, we can, because everything we just touched on, we could go so much deeper, and we will. But that's kind of like a vague definition of ADHD. I hope we've done it justice.
Well, yeah, I hope we've done it justice too, but I guess we can come back. And also, I think we're just trying to make these episodes easily digestible for people with ADHD.
Exactly. So yeah, follow us on social media. WTF is AuDHD podcast. Thank you to everyone who's followed so far. We've had insane growth on TikTok. It's actually been quite overwhelming.
And the comments are really like lovely, and like everyone's like finding support there and being seen, and that's our whole goal of this. And everyone's so lovely. Yeah, it's been really, really, really wholesome. We'll keep creating this community and maybe make like a forum eventually of all these people so we can all communicate together, because I think we're all a bit lonely and we need these chats. And no, like people saying, oh, everyone's just ADHD these days. It's because we've finally got the info, and I think that's a really, really good thing. We're finally recognizing it, and it's not a bad thing. And so what if there's lots of people getting diagnosed? What's it to you? Yeah, I'm sick of people suffering in silence. Me too, and that's why we're doing this. Yeah, and not feeling supported, and then therefore, sometimes for some people it's also, it's diagnosis saves lives. It does. Or just even self-identifying and talking to people that are like you. And because obviously, as we've said, diagnosis isn't very accessible. Yeah. But learning about it, maybe self-identifying if being diagnosed is not accessible to you, and then just having a community where you can relate to people. That could actually just be all you need. Yeah. Or like life-saving enough. Exactly. So also, if you wouldn't mind, if you're enjoying these podcast episodes, please rate us on your podcast app as well, because it really does help, I think, with like algorithms pushing us out to other people. Like and subscribe. Yeah, like and subscribe. No, but rating us would be really, really, really appreciated. Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining. And next week we'll cover off a similar episode to this one, but about autism. Yes. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Have a great hour. Bye.